Welcome back to part 10 of the Zentangle Ocean project, and we're going to pick right up where we left off with the last video. We completed this bottom portion of our drawing and got the initial elements in there. We actually used a number of our 13 different patterns and tangles. We've got one here with Zenemone. We have quabog scattered throughout. We used oysteroid, phycops, coral seeds, sea shimmer. We put in our treasure chest and our coral silhouettes and the bonus little giant, well not little, the bonus giant clam with the black pearl was just thrown in there. But we've already used a number of our patterns, but we've got a bunch more to go, so we're going to jump right in. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to start to add some seaweed patterns using our jelly legs that we learned, one of our very first ones I think in this series that we learned. So I'm going to create some swooping shapes up here, and this pattern makes such a great piece of seaweed because it's got built-in movement as though the waves and water motion is capturing it as well. Now you want to leave just a little space, and we're going to draw a couple additional of these items coming up here, and they're going to occupy this little chunk over here on the left. And I think I'll draw one more at least. We'll see where this one goes. And now we have to finish this by adding those little nodules that remind me of the little bits on kelp or seaweed that sort of grow out of those plants and those giant weeds in the sea. We're just alternating back and forth just like we did when we learned it before. And again, we're looking for simplicity in the detail here, so we don't have to be perfect with these shapes. We just want to get them in there and try to alter them a little bit to make a more natural variety in our bundle of weeds here. Now, hopefully you didn't fill in too far. I'm kind of wanting to show you this pattern. We need space up in here for some of our sea creatures. Alright, now we want to add our little leaves to each of these little intersections just to make this look a little more plant-like and to fill in this area over here a little more nicely and make it a little more full. Just creating little loops as I go up and down, trying to vary the direction that they face just to make it a little more full of a plant-like shape. Let's add a few more seaweed pieces here and there. I'm going to add a couple shorter ones coming out here. We'll make them the exact same way. They're just going to be smaller and nestled in behind of those other shapes. And I might even have a couple coming out here, shorter ones again. We don't want to consume all my space up top there. That looks good. And now I'm going to move over here to the far right side. And let me zoom out one more time just so you can see. And I'm going to create some coming up here on this edge, but only out a little ways. And I'm also going to do a little quabog here, I think, too, just to get a little different variety of things down here. And now right from behind there, I'm going to bring up this shape here. One over on this side. maybe just a smaller one right here. Now, a suggestion, it's not a rule or a law, but when you're creating a piece of art, you want the viewer's eyes to keep moving around within the page. You don't want them to be pointed off the camera, so to speak, or off the page. So when you're creating elements, have them curved or facing inward in the right places. Now you can have things facing outward here, for example, because it's going to push them out this way, but it just helps the eye to naturally flow. Again, it's not a rule or a law of art, but it's a technique that artists will use to keep the viewer noticing all the details that they took the time to draw. So in that sense, then, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to add some little Indyrellas that are facing inward. And they're kind of coming out of this patch of seaweed over here. And they're flowing their way toward the center of the drawing. And these are just very simplified Zentangle pattern that we're co-opting here and making it work for us as a fish. Now down in here, maybe we've got one that's also coming out, but he's a little bit smaller, and he's down here in the trying to get down into the weeds down there at the bottom. And over here we can have one facing outward or inward. It doesn't really matter, so I'm going to put a couple facing this way. Now let's also add a couple seahorses. Now they're perfect for down in here in this coral areas. So I'm going to add one right here. And these are going to be really tiny, so they're going to be hard to draw perfectly, but start with a little dot. Tiny because we want to keep them relative to the rest of this, or as much as we can. And now it's going to curve off his back here and down, and we're going to make the tail curve right here. And there's our snout. I'm going to add just tiny little details here to convey those little fins that some of those seahorses have. So he's just floating down here. And now maybe we should have one over here too, I think. Down, I'm going to hide one right in here. Actually, I'm going to put one right here. Starting with that little dot. Curving down and around. And it curls right there. So the snout's coming out this way. And if you need to practice these more on a separate sheet of paper, you can do that. That's one reason we introduce them to you separately, so that you have an opportunity to explore them and to do different things with it. I'm going to add one more right here, I think. Just want a little more variety. Whoops, I'm sorry, I was off camera there. So these are really tiny to draw here, but if you just take your time, they come out just fine. Now we need to draw our manta rays, or the tangle is just called Rayz, but we're going to draw them right in this area. And they're going to maybe come right up close to that centerpiece there. So I'm going to draw one, the main one, that's the big one in the foreground. It's going to be just like this. And these are fictional versions of Rayz based on a Zentangle pattern, but we want to make them look like a Rayz. So when we draw the wing, let's draw it kind of like a triangular shape. And then this one will be a little bit truncated, not quite as long because we're seeing it in perspective. It's off in the distance there. Now there's a million ways, as I mentioned previously, that we can shade and color these, but I'm going to use a pattern that conveys a little more realism, like an actual ray, a giant stingray. They often are black with white dots. Now we're drawing in black and white as well, but we're reversing that because of the fact that we can't, if we ink that out, if you don't have a white pen or something, it's not going to work real well. So we're just going to do this and create this kind of a pattern, just some dots. That's all we're doing, kind of an irregular bunch of dots. And then we're going to ink in this centerpiece all together. And so by doing that, we'll add additional contrast here to the drawing as well, some other darker spots. But it's small enough where it's not going to overwhelm the entire drawing. Alright, now to make this little bundle of these guys, we want one that's coming out right up here. So we're just going to see sort of the top end of him like that, and then his shape comes like this and like that, and we can't see the rest of him because he's far enough away and he's kind of underneath, so to speak, or as our perspective shows that he's underneath that other ray. So we're just catching him like this, but we're still going to add the dot pattern here. Alright, and now I'm going to add one more down here. He's going to be kind of floating a little further away yet, so he's a little bit smaller. And now we're going to make our wings of these amazing sea rays like that, and that allows us to layer it again and help with the perspective and the dimension, and it just makes it a neater pattern. Alright, so we've got our rays. Now we need to draw a shark, and he's going to go right here. Now in our original drawing we curved him this way, but I want to curve it this way, exact same shark, but we're going to curve it this way so that again he's bringing us back in. Everything's kind of moving us back into this drawing and not creating any problems for us with our artistic expression. Now if you'd like, since it maybe is not the way you practiced it, it's the exact same shark, but we're going to draw him right here. So I've got my pencil out just to show you. So we're going to make that curve. Just make it loose and sloppy at first so you know what's going on. We've got our tail fin here. And let's see, we're going to bring this down. Connecting there, we're going to have our fin that's here and here, the opposite side. We're going to have our dorsal fin up top. Of course, our eyeball, we're going to have our gill slits, and we're going to have our mouth there with the teeth, and we're going to draw the top portion of him just like that. And he's just spinning around. Maybe he's guarding or protecting that chest there or something. Now you can draw him a little smaller, a little bigger. It's fun to just pack the whole tile here, and we'll leave just enough white space for our water in the background. Everything else, it's a very, very busy coral reef with a lot of activity going on. So let's, with that, drawing there, or that pencil sketch, let's go ahead and ink in our shark. Now that we know where everything's going to go. Don't forget his teeth. And now the last thing here on our shark, we want to add some of those motion bubbles or sea bubbles. Just to create the sense of motion that has happened here was he quickly decided to turn around. And there we go. We have all the major components in place now. So we're going to begin shading. So we want to get our pencils out and start adding some shades to the areas that we need to accentuate. And of course our shark, he's going to have gray on the top. One thing too, I just noticed I left out, you don't have to put it in, but if you want to add some little hatch marks that indicate the bend here of our shark. And we'll blend all this, but we're just getting some graphite down. So I'm just adding a tiny bit here and there in the crevices and the pieces that are behind, and I'm going to just sort of watch how this blends to tell me whether I'm going to need to add some more shading or not. I know it looks a little muddy. I purposely used a little bit darker pencil this time so that you could see it more easily on the screen, but I think it's having the effect of making some of these shadows darker than I intended. But hopefully you can at least see it on camera. I know sometimes it's very hard to see that. Now what we can also do if we want is we can add with our tortillon that we've just been using so that it's got some graphite loaded into it, so to speak. We can add little streaks or marks, little bits of wave activity into the ocean that is surrounding this scene in the coral reef, and that will help give the sense of a shimmer of that ocean water and those creatures and things within it. You can go over the creatures a little or behind them. You don't have to color in the whole area. Now it would be darker as we get down in the sea, so we might make something like that. little vertical streaks going up, filling in that sense of shadow as we get deeper in the ocean. Again, just some basic highlights. Now, as far as the jelly legs, you can add some shade to those like we did in our... But because they're close together and it's going to be, due to size and scale, hard to distinguish, you don't have to be perfect about it. I'm literally just brushing this along here to create that little bit of value difference so that we can see that those indeed are plants with leaves and things like that. They're not just strings, but they have some shape to them. So you can go in with your graphite on your tortillon already and just blend that in. That's why I saved them for last. And so here we have our finished final drawing composition for the Zentangle Ocean project. Now it's busy. There's a lot going on. We used 13 or 14 different elements, including our tangle patterns and our cartoon elements. But we've created something that's really fun. So let me just end by saying thank you so very much for following with me along in this journey. And I look forward to seeing everyone again here real soon back in the Tangles and Toons channel. Until then, take care. Bye-bye now.